Welcome to our first presenter for our social science speaker series this fall term. And it's a great pleasure for me to be able to introduce our first speaker of the series, Professor Matt Farrell. You may recognize his face because he is on local TV. He is our local celebrity here at Fanny Shop. And he's also a full-time faculty member in Language and Liberal Studies, teaching political science. So he's here today to open up our series to talk to you about the American politics, wondering if it's broken. We'd like to welcome Matt, and good luck, have fun.
I just want to thank everybody for coming. I'm a big fan of this series. It's a chance to showcase the social sciences, and we don't get to do that a lot. We're sort of we're kind of underrated, if you will. We're not like the hard sciences, the physical sciences. We can't really study things with certainty like chemistry, for example, so we have to take educated guesses. We have to come up with sort of frameworks of understanding. We have to come up with theories. And they're a little more controversial. And so I'm glad that we've got this series that we can do that, especially when it comes to politics. Because politics is one of those things you can't put in a lab. You can't study it very easily. You've got to take guesses at what you think is going on and try and explain things. And so that's what we like to do when it comes to political events. And that's a little bit what I'm going to talk about today, is politics broken. Because it's been a very interesting year and a bit in politics. We've got a lot of things happening. Here in Canada, for one, we had a shirtless boxer become Prime Minister. And that was a big change because he brought with him 3 million new voters into the electorate. People that had never voted before, or at least hadn't voted in the last election. 3 million new voters. So that's something. That's pretty interesting. Bernie Sanders, the gentleman that looks like kind of like a mad scientist. He had a pretty good run in the Democratic primary in the United States, and he did so by mobilizing millions of college and university students. He's 74 years old, and people in their 20s were coming out in droves to support him. So that's interesting, too, from my perspective. The real interesting fellow, though, the guy with the hair-cutting shears in his hands, the former reality TV host and regular on the professional wrestling circuit, Donald Trump. He's very interesting. And I'm going to try not to, I don't want it to seem like I'm picking on him today. I'm really just interested. I'm interested in how he was able to do so well. When I see a guy like Donald Trump, what that signals is a realignment in the electorate and the party system. Because he believes things, he's in favor of things that the rest of his party usually isn't. He's bringing in something new. He's changing what the party stands for and the things they believe. So anytime that happens, I'm interested in it. From a political science perspective, I'm interested in realignments, because they provoke some questions. Why is that happening? The Republican Party never believed in this before, but now they do because of him. So what's going on? Elections are just political events, but you really have to understand the context, to understand what's going on. So we're going to try and do a bit of that. First, just a quick caveat, a quick definition. When I say politics, don't be scared. Politics is not something to be scared of. Politics just means making decisions in groups. That's all politics is. It might be a hockey team, it might be a condo board, it might be roommates, or it might be a country choosing their leader. Politics is just that, making decisions in groups. It gets controversial because you'd like to be the one making the decision. If you want your kid to make the hockey team, it helps if you're the coach. It helps if you get to pick the people on the hockey team. That's where politics comes from. When it comes to running a country, obviously you want to run the country the way you think it should be run, and maybe reward some of your friends with key appointments. So with that as a backdrop, key question: how was this guy so successful? How does a guy with little experience, a guy that's done pretty much everything you're not supposed to do if you're going to run for politics? If you plan on having a career in politics, you shouldn't be a reality TV host. You shouldn't appear in professional wrestling. You shouldn't say a bunch of inflammatory things on the Howard Stern radio show. He's done them all. Public infidelity, scandal, you name it. You don't do those kind of things if you're going to run for office. But he did, and he's on the verge of becoming president. So I'm curious as to why. How do we explain that? There are a lot of explanations out there. There's a lot of theories. A lot of people think they know why it's happening. And I'm going to go through a list of those and tell you why I think that they're not really accurate. And then I'm going to offer some perspectives of my own. 4 perspectives that come from the social sciences. So, one of the things Donald Trump tells us, crime is out of control. You need to elect him. He's a strong leader because he's going to fix that. Crime is out of control. If anybody watched the debate the other night, he compared the streets of Chicago to the streets of Kabul. It's unsafe for people to live. Well, turns out that's not really the case. Homicides are going down across the country. They're going down in Chicago. The graph looks very similar for Chicago, New York. Crime's not out of control. It's actually better than it's been in a while. So no, that's not really what's going on. Well, then it's immigration. Immigration's out of control. We need a guy like Donald Trump to fix it. He wants a wall at the border, and he's made some controversial comments about people that come across the border to live in the United States from Mexico. And that's not really happening either. On an annual basis, immigration's pretty low. 2010 statistics, because that was the last census, the numbers through to 2016 look like they're about the same. So immigration is actually not out of control. It's down a bit. Okay, I mean illegal immigration. There's people that are coming across the border illegally. That's the real problem. It's not the problem either. It looks like it was a problem. There's a bit of an upswing. But lately it's been in sort of a holding pattern, a little bit of a decline. So no, illegal immigration isn't the problem. And actually President Obama has set a record for the number of deportations. People that were in the country illegally and shipped back to their home country. So if anything, the country's doing better on illegal immigration than they have for a while. So that reason doesn't seem to hold either. Okay, I meant refugees. It's not the refugees, they're coming, they're bringing their values, they're changing the country. Well, you can see there's been some spikes in the past, but right now it's been pretty steady for a while. Wouldn't say it's out of control compared to some of the earlier spikes, 1980 and in the middle of the 1990s. And for the record, I mean, refugees are people that are leaving their home because it's been blown up, oftentimes by the Americans. So if you want fewer refugees, then maybe cut back on the number of countries you destroy. But it doesn't really look like that's the problem either. So something must be going on. Well, maybe we can bring them together. Maybe it's the immigrants that commit all the crimes. That's the problem. People move here from other countries, they don't really have a stake in it, so they commit crimes. That's what's happening. Well, not likely. This little sample of people that have committed crimes over a 12-month span looks like the same percentage are born in the United States that are second-generation immigrants. Turns out the first-generation immigrants are extremely well-behaved. I guess you move to a new country, you want to be on your best behavior when you're there. So if we were really concerned about people committing crimes, it looks like 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds might be the problem. So maybe the better idea would just be to lock up everybody that's 16 and 17. Because this doesn't seem to be the problem. Immigrants not committing crimes. How about this one? I like Donald Trump because he's not a typical politician. He says what he means. Tells us, speaks his mind. This is a common one as well. People want that, they think that's genuine. The only problem is that he tells it like it isn't. He has a pretty strong record of saying things that are inaccurate. I'm not going to say he's lying, because I don't know if he's lying. In fact, his own campaign manager went on TV last week to say, you can't say he's a liar because he just doesn't know the answers. So presumably if he doesn't know the answers, he just makes one up. Therefore, it's not lying. If you're interested, I mean, this is a guy who's very public. He'll have a media appearance in the morning, then he'll have an event later in the day, and then he has another media phone in the evening. So he's 3 times a day, he's saying stuff on the record. Oftentimes he says stuff that, sometimes he even contradict himself, but he says things that just don't turn out to be true. And the Toronto Star has a pretty great daily tracker of how many things Donald said the previous day that were untrue. It's usually around 15. It's been as high as 30, it's been as low as about 5, but usually it's around 15. So you want to say that he speaks his mind, he tells it like it is. Well, he tells it like it isn't. One thing that you can take away from this, though, is his speaking style. If you ever hear him speak, it's short and direct and abrupt, and he speaks in sentence fragments and not real sentences. That is interpreted as being genuine and being honest. So when people hear his speaking style, it is not really long and contrived like a politician. It's short, direct, off the cuff. It seems more genuine, and people interpret that as being honest. So that could be what's going on, but in terms of him telling it like it is, doesn't seem to be the case. Another reason people say they like him, he's an outsider. Hillary Clinton's a career politician. We can't have another one of those. We need somebody that's new. We need an outsider to change things. It's hard to call him an outsider. He had the Clintons at his wedding. He golfs with Bill Clinton pretty regularly. He's met Ronald Reagan a bunch of times. He's a regular at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He's very much in the circles of power. He's far from an outsider. In fact, he relies on access to politicians to help further his business career. So you can't really say he's an outsider when he has presidents come to his wedding. He's very much in the fold when it comes to politics. He's in the elite. Here's one that's a little more interesting. Supporters are racist. There's probably something to that. But I think there's an important part that gets ignored, and that race is a huge part of American politics. In fact, this is the #1 issue. American politics is about race, period. And it always has been since 1860. Something that doesn't really get a lot of attention. American politics is about race. Every country has their different sort of political issues where things pivot on. In Canada, it's two things: our relationship with the Americans and our relationship with ourselves. That's usually what we're arguing about. The Americans, it's about race. And it has been since 1860. What's different this time is some of the language. Normally, politicians don't want to encourage the racists to support them. And there is a block of the population that we could say has racist views. They always have. They always have. In the past, they've supported the Democratic Party up until 1960. And in the 60s, they switched. They started supporting the Republican Party. So they've always been there. Donald Trump seems to appeal to them a little more. And you've got to think of him through the lens of, he's not really a typical politician, he's a salesman. So for him, he's always selling, kind of a huckster. Selling, pitching, his next sales pitch. Running for president, he kind of uses the same sort of language. So I don't know if he's a racist, he may be, he may not be, but when he sees people that support him and give him attention that are going to vote for him, he's going to validate them. If they happen to be on the extreme fringes of the American right, he doesn't really care. He sees that as votes, that's currency, and that's good, I'm going to go with it. So that's a little different than most politicians. A lot of politicians have used what we call dog whistle politics. They're talking code. They wouldn't say racist things right away, but they kind of give little clues. They say, we need to secure our border against outsiders. When it's kind of a code word to support, they really mean let's keep out the brown people. So they do things like that, dog whistle politics. Donald Trump doesn't really do that. He doesn't beat around the bush. He's a little more open. So that's, I think, what's different is more the style. But the racist, not new. Big part of American politics and has been since 1860. There's a lot of other ones. Okay, that Donald Trump's the poor working class, there's a lot of economic anxiety. Actually, it turns out that they, on average, have higher incomes than supporters of Hillary Clinton. So it's probably not that one. Well, they're angry. Donald Trump supporters are angry. They are. But the Republican supporters are angry. They were angry in 2012, they were angry in 2010, they were angry in 2008. They're always angry. So that's not new. The Republicans are just angry. That's part of the way the party works. So then what's really going on? If I don't think it's any of those things, what's happening? Now I'm going to give you, again, 4 perspectives that come from the political science, that come from the social sciences rather, and they may shed some light on it. You may think that some of them are valid, that some of them might be more relevant than others, but I'm going to throw them out there and see what we do, because that's what we can do in the social sciences. We offer frameworks of understanding that might explain what's going on. So one of them comes from political science. Institutions matter. Political science, we study institutions. What we mean by that is rules. We study rules for making decisions. Making decisions in groups, we study the rules. If you change the rules, you could change the outcomes. Here's Canadian election results. The Liberal Party won with 39%. 39%, and you become the Prime Minister. 60% of the people voted for anybody but you. Congratulations, you won. Seems kind of weird, but that's the rules. We have a system, and that's the Liberal Party won within that system. These are Israeli election results, and you don't really need to know the party names or anything, but the one on the end there, the Likud party, they won the election. You can see what the percentage of the vote that they won. 30%. 30% of the vote, congratulations, you're the Prime Minister. 70% of the people voted for anybody but you. They hate you. Congratulations, you're the Prime Minister. Why? Different rules. Different rules for making that decision. And an interesting way to think about it is ordering pizza. Ordering pizza is always challenging in a group. How do you do it? It is. You have a small group, maybe it's easy. Maybe you come to consensus. Consensus when everybody agrees. Big group like this, I don't even know where to begin. We could offer some options and we could vote. Pepperoni, maybe like pepperoni pizza. A few for pepperoni. Vegetarian, maybe vegetarian. Oh, lots of it. Hawaiian. See, we could. Okay, we voted, we've expressed a preference. How do we pick? Is it the one that got the most votes? Even if it's 30%? Or do you want one that's over half the people? Do you want a majority of the people that prefer it? How do you pick? Your different thresholds would give you different results. And I'm probably going to miss out. My favorite pizza, my creamy garlic chicken, probably wouldn't win a vote. Unless I was in charge of setting up the vote. I might try and arrange sort of an elimination tournament, pairwise options where we could play off and I could manipulate the system. And I could do that. I can pair all the popular pizzas against each other. I can make sure they eliminate each other. And then, lo and behold, my favorite pizza wins. Why? Because I'm in control of setting the rules. The rules matter when you're making decisions. How is that relevant? Well, the Republicans. They were choosing a candidate for president back in 2012. There's lots of them. You see a whole bunch of them up there. And a presidential primary, if you're not really sure what it is, a good way to think of it is like a NASCAR race. The candidates, anybody that wants to run, they're the race car drivers. And they go around the country and they run in little races. In NASCAR, you run in races around the country, you get points for winning. At the end of the year, the person with the most points, congratulations, you've won the series. Or at least you get to advance to the cup, but we'll put that part aside. So, that's kind of how the primaries work. All the candidates for president go around the country, they have events, and they debate, and then the people vote. Instead of having races, they have votes. And if you win the vote, then you get points. Only those points are called delegates. What was happening in 2012 is a lot of people were winning races. Newt Gingrich would win a primary, so he'd get some points. And Rick Santorum would. And then Herman Cain would. And all these people kept taking turns doing well. Michelle Bachmann. Every week, a new person was winning, and they were getting lots of points. Nobody was pulling away from the pack, and nobody was leading the series. It went on forever. Looked like this. The Republicans were beating the crap out of each other. They were spending money, they were debating each other, they were insulting each other, and in doing so, that really opened them up to attack from the Democrats, because the Democrats already had their candidate. And he was just sitting there laughing at them. Look at those fools beating the crap out of each other, wasting their money. And he sat back and eventually was able to win because they had really killed themselves, the Republicans killed themselves in a very nasty primary. Looking forward to 2016, they didn't want that to happen again. And it looked like it would. Hillary's going to win, and we're going to be stuck with a big battle royal on our side. We're going to spend all our money, we're going to insult each other, and Hillary's just going to win in the end. So they changed the rules. For the 2016 primary, the Republicans changed the rules. They moved some primary contests a bit later into the spring and summer. They changed the way some of the delegates, the points were awarded. They wanted to make it easier for somebody, if you won the early contest, if you won the early races, if you were the early leader, they wanted to make it easier for you to win. That's what happened. They changed the rules to make it easier for somebody to win if they were winning early. In a crowded field, with a lot of people that had a lot of experience and a lot of money, but they all pretty much believed the same thing, slightly different versions of the same thing, one person stood out. One person, Donald Trump, won a lot of the early contests. He built up an early lead, and because of the new rules, it was tougher for people to catch up. They changed the rules, and they made it easier for Donald Trump to win. If you change the rules, you change the outcome. And so the rules this time made it a little easier for Trump to win. Now, they didn't do it on purpose. It's not like they said, how can we fix this so Donald Trump wins? I think they were trying to fix it so Jeb Bush would win, because he had the most money, and that didn't work. Change the rules, and change the outcome. And that's one of the reasons why Donald Trump was so successful. Coming to the table with no experience and no funding. So that's one perspective. Just for reference, the vote totals, he didn't get the majority of the votes. Most of the people voted for other candidates. So he only got 45% of the votes, yet because of the way the delegates were awarded, he got more points and ended up winning. So again, change the rules, change the outcome. Another perspective, from political psychology. Political science, we steal stuff from other disciplines and we call it our own. It's really just psychology, but we apply it to political problems. And we're going to do a little thought experiment. Let's say this is December. Fast forward to December, we're here, we're writing an exam, writing a final exam. It's an awful room to write an exam, so I apologize. But you've got your multiple choice test, you've got your Scantron card, and everybody's ready. Everybody's ready to write. And then somebody, what's your name? Caitlin. Caitlin stands up and says, I'd just like to let everybody know that I believe B is the best answer. I'm going to choose B for every question because B is the best, and we should all be picking B, and I'm committed to B and I will always pick B. And I don't think you're going to do very well on that test. Why on earth would anybody do that? Without even reading the questions, you go through and you pick all the answers. That's what we do with politics. That's what partisanship is. You don't even know the facts, you don't even know the question, but you've picked an answer ahead of time. I'm a Democrat, therefore I hate everything the Republicans say. I'm a Republican, I hate everything the Democrats say. Even if they have a good idea, it doesn't matter. I don't believe in them. So in partisanship, we kind of pick our answer before we even know the questions. And that understanding that might help understand Donald Trump and how he was successful. How do we know this happens? Very interesting experiment. YouGov and the Huffington Post did a survey. Got 1,000 people together, split them up into 2 groups. They asked them about health care. They asked them about a lot of issues, but I'm just going to show you this one. President Obama has praised the idea of universal health care. Do you agree or disagree with Obama? But universal health care. And you can see no surprise. Democrats like the idea, Republicans don't. They asked the same question to the other group, but they changed the words. Donald Trump loves universal health care. Do you agree with Donald Trump? Look what happens. Democrats drop off, all of a sudden Republicans start to like the idea. They did this with a number of different questions and got the same results. Here you go side by side just to see. Different wording, different responses. Why? Because the world's a complex place. And I don't want to say voters are stupid because that's unfair to all of us. We're not stupid, but our attention is scarce. We can't pay attention to every issue all the time. So what some of us do is take shortcuts. That's what partisanship is. It's a shortcut. I don't know about healthcare. I don't know about the Iran deal. I don't know about foreign policy. I don't know about government spending. But I do know whether I like Obama or whether I like Trump. Whether I like Clinton or whether I like Trump. And so you use that as a shortcut. And there's a lot of evidence to that. And the American system's kind of set up to encourage that. Voting isn't easy. This is what, one example of a ballot in the United States. When you show up to vote for president, you don't just vote for president. You vote for governor, your state legislature, your city council, mayor. You vote for everything all at once. You might have a 3, 4, or 5-page ballot. You've got to go through it all. It's a lot. It takes a long time. When you watch television, you see the big long lineups at American polling stations because the freaking ballots are long. It takes a long time to vote for everything. So, 17 states decided to make it easy. You can pick an all of the above. You can go through and just say, I pick all the Republicans. I don't care who, I don't care their names, I don't care what they do, I'm going to vote for all the Republicans or all the Democrats. You don't even have to know who they are. That's an option. That's an option. And there's some good evidence that most of the electorate makes their decision that way. For each party. Don't even think. And this helps explain Donald Trump. Back in March 2015, when there's a very big crowded primary, 1% of voters say that Donald Trump was their preferred choice. 1% of the voters. The others didn't really like him, and about 80% of the others said, absolutely not, I'll never vote for him no matter what. Even if he wins, I'm still not going to vote for him. Never. Never, never, never. There was even a Never Trump movement, where funders and donors and other candidates got together to strategize, how can we beat Trump? How can we make sure he doesn't win, because we're not going to vote for him. Well, by the end of it, 88% said, yeah, I'm going to vote for Trump. I think he's the best choice. He's good. Why? Because he's a Republican, and they would never vote for a Democrat. Democrats wouldn't vote for Republicans, and the other way around. You've already made up your mind, you've already made your choice. They could have a bag of hammers up there, they'd vote for him. They could set a mattress on fire as a Republican, they'd vote for the mattress on fire. Doesn't matter, you'll vote for whoever your party picks, because that's what you do. You wouldn't vote for the other party. And we can see a lot of evidence of this. Social media makes it worse. The fact that we've got a lot of social media, you can see there's a lot of people out there that have their political identification in their profile. It's part of who they are, it's part of their identity. They're making an identity claim based on their party affiliation or their ideology. They might say they're a hardcore Republican or a hardcore environmentalist. And that really fuels your behavior on social media, sort of call-out culture, kind of, you don't really have good ways of debating other people, you just sort of call them out on negative behavior, and it changes how we get our news. A lot of people are getting news on Facebook, and that news is tailored to them. Even without that, people that rely on their Twitter or just selecting their media from a number of different sources. There's so many different places you can get your news from. People are picking the news that already conforms with their beliefs. We call that confirmation bias. And there's all kinds of so much different information out there. Think of all the different media outlets that you could get news from. From blogs, from television, from news, you wouldn't even be able to put a number on it. There's so many different ones out there. So what do? You pick the ones that give you the news that you like. Confirmation bias. You ignore the ones that give you the information that you don't like. And that happens. That happens a lot. Fact-checking, something that's been very prominent in this campaign. We're going to fact-check everything Donald Trump says. Why do his supporters keep believing him when we fact-check everything he says? Well, fact-checking doesn't really matter. A lot of the research backs this up. There's a study from 2014 that came through and found out that that's not what happens. People don't process information that way. They take the good stuff that they like, and they ignore the other stuff that they don't. And a lot of that's driven by partisan leanings. They make up their mind ahead of time, and then they interpret the facts accordingly. So why did Donald Trump do so well without having experience? Well, because they were going to vote for him anyway. 80% of people said they'd never vote for him, and then after a few months they all said they would. Why? Partisanship. Partisanship is a very strong force in America, and there's a couple social science surveys. The National American Election Study and the General Social Survey, they track Americans' attitudes over time. And since the 1970s, Americans' attitudes haven't really changed that much. But partisanship really has. They've gotten more partisan, even though the things they believe are pretty much the same as they've always been. And so a lot of that's driven by social media, but that partisanship is very important, and it drives a lot of what's going on in American politics. So that's another idea. Third one I think is really useful to understand, because again, an election is a one-time political event, but we've really got to understand the whole society, the backdrop, the context that it's happening. Something called declining social capital, and this sort of comes from the realm of sociology. When we say capital, what do we mean? Capital, we mean things to run a business, right? You need money, and you need equipment, you need factories, that's capital. You need capital to run an economy. Social capital is the same thing, but it involves, it's from a social perspective. You need social capital to have a society, to have a democracy. Think of moving day. What do you need when it's moving day? You need people, you need friends to help. If you've got a lot of social capital, you know a lot of people to help you move. Low social capital, not a lot of people. That's essentially what social capital is. And the people that you know, networks of trust, people that you trust, and norms of reciprocity, people that help each other out. And that was really talked about at length by Robert Putnam. Fantastic book. I encourage people to read it. It's a huge book. I'll warn you, but it's excellent. Robert Putnam documented the decline of social capital since the 1950s in the United States, and it somewhat applies to Canada too. How do you measure that? How do you measure declining social capital? Well, he used indicators of memberships in organizations. How many people join the Parent-Teacher Association? How many people have family dinners? How many people members of a union? He tracked membership. How many people join things? People don't join things like they used to. That's been on a steady decline. And when you join things outside of a church, he didn't include churches, although some of his recent work does talk about religion, you meet people that aren't like you. You meet people that don't believe the same things as you, and you form relationships with those people. And that's a good thing. That's been on a steady decline since the 1950s, he said. And he used bowling as an analogy. How many people here belong to a bowling league?
Yeah.
Nobody bowls in a league?
I did when I was a kid.
When you were a kid? There you go. Nobody from Winnipeg? There's got to be somebody from Winnipeg who bowls in a league, no? That's not fair to Winnipeggers. Anybody from Manitoba? You don't bowl in leagues anymore. We used to. If we asked this question in the 1950s, pretty much all of us would be in a bowling league. And there's been a steady decline in membership in bowling leagues. People are opting, bowling becomes more of a social pursuit you do with maybe a close friend or family or yourself. It's not something you join in a league to meet people that are different than you. And so he tracked all of this membership in different organizations, and he found it's been on a steady decline. People are becoming less engaged. They become less engaged, less connected to each other. And they're more likely to live and work in different places. They might live in one city and work in another. And if you think about the whole commuting process, you drive into a garage, downstairs in your home theater, get up in the morning, out of the garage, off to work in a different city, come back, you would never have to see your neighbors. And many of us don't. And so there's a lot of negatives associated with that. Think of how we play video games now. Pokemon Go. People together in the same spot to interact with each other. No, to stare at phones together. If you think declining social capital is another thing, look at this. People go into public spaces for recreation and they don't even look at each other. That's declining social capital. So, why is that a problem? Well, it has some negative effects. It has some negative effects. When people don't trust each other, society doesn't quite work as well. You're suspicious of others. You're suspicious of people that aren't like you. And American society's become more segregated. Segregated according to race. There's a lot of white neighborhoods and black neighborhoods. By ideology, there's actually Republican neighborhoods and Democratic neighborhoods. And by income, there's rich neighborhoods and poor neighborhoods. And so if you're living around people like you, you're not really meeting a lot of people that are different than you, especially if the membership in these organizations is in decline. And so one thing we know about Donald Trump supporters is that they report, and these are in surveys, exit polls and public opinion surveys, they seem to be less engaged. Why is Trump doing so well? Because people that are less engaged tend to support him, and people generally are becoming less engaged. Voters that are less engaged are also more extreme, and so that would explain why some on the extreme right have come out and support Donald Trump. They're less engaged, they're less likely to join things, less likely to belong to a union or a club or a sports team. They're solitary, they're disengaged. And that tends to be a pattern for about 52% according to this one piece from the Atlantic. You're also, if you're disengaged, you sort of segregate yourself, you tend to be vulnerable to sort of stereotypes. Stereotypes, negative stereotypes of others, and you can see that among Trump supporters. People that are disengaged, people that only surround themselves with people that are like them and think like them, tend to be more open to stereotypes, especially racial ones, racially motivated ones. That looks like it's happening with Trump supporters. Another side effect of declining social capital is something called hunkering down. Hunkering down is partly that, sort of surrounding yourselves, retreating into a shell, surrounding yourselves in a little bubble by people that are just like you. And arsenal building. People buying guns is a symptom of declining social capital. There's been a big shift in gun ownership since the 1950s, and there's a big concentration of it. A small percentage of people are buying a lot of guns, and it's gotten worse in recent years. That number used to be 7% a couple years ago, now it's 3%. 3% of the population own 50% of the guns. Why? Again, disconnect, disengagement, lack of trust, and you sort of retreat into your shell, and you do things like arsenal building. So that could be what's going on. That could be part of it too. That's sort of the sociological explanation. I'm going to give you one other explanation. I should have some time for questions. I'm going to try and make some time at the end. But here's another perspective. Cultural alienation. Donald Trump supporters are part of a group that is being alienated in society. When we think of American values, that's one of the things we talk about culture. We think of values, shared values and norms. What would you say American values are? It's kind of tough to put your finger on it. American values might be things like get an education, get a job, some material wealth, maybe get a house, and live the good life, or some permutation thereof. What are American values? Well, one writer from The Guardian, Chris Arnaud, says that there's a big shift. There's actually two pockets of American values. There's one that's dominant, and there's one that's kind of on the bottom that people look down on. And the people on the top, he spent years roaming around America interviewing people in poverty. This is a weird graph. He's a finance guy, so he has to put everything in a graph. But he says there's two axes, values and elitism. And the elites in a society are the ones that shape the values. So the people that are in government, that are in the media, that are in the education system, the professors that are in the academy, they kind of shape what the values are, what's important in society, what people should strive to. We see those images in the media, through advertising, and then of course through the education system and through our government. He says there's an elite group in A, up there, point A, that they're in charge. They're the dominant members of society, they're the people that run for office, people in the media, and they're the ones that sort of set what's important, what the American values are. And those people are generally college educated, living in an urban area, in white collar occupations. That's generally what they are. People in B sort of have different values that aren't really held in high esteem. Live in rural areas, work with their hands, so in the trades or in manufacturing, and they didn't go to college, no college degree. So there's a big division in America, and it's not class related, it's related on this new cultural divide that's emerging. So the people on the bottom obviously feel like they don't have the same worth, and they'd like to change that. They'd like to get up to point A. Is there any evidence to support this? Well, we think of the way the American population is spread out. Half the population lives in those little red pockets. The other half lives in the sort of yellowy orange color. That's a pretty big split. Most of the population lives in just a few little spots, and the rest of it is spread out in rural areas. So if that's the case, we could be onto something. And you can see where they are, little pockets, the big urban centers that we might be able to identify. Centers of commerce, people where a lot of the white-collar jobs are, in the tech sector and in government, are in 23 different places. They're concentrated in 23 different areas. And that kind of looks a little like it resembles the other graph, too. So that's happening in the same spot. Levels of, percentage of people with a college degree. The dark brown areas are where over 50% of the population has a college degree. Again, similar looking map. You're seeing two pockets of society. And then when we look at the election map from 2012, kind of looks the same. Republicans voting that way, the Democrats are in blue, the Republicans in red. They all do kind of align, so we might be onto something. There's a elite-driven culture that sort of looks down upon half of America, and that half of America is upset with that, and they're voting for somebody like Donald Trump. His thesis is that if you're in B, and if you're the culture that feels marginalized, if you want to think of a good example, if you're in A, and you had a wedding, somebody in point B is likely to show up at your wedding in their hunting camouflage. If you're in A, you'd be mortified by that. So that's a good way to think of the cultural difference. Primarily rural, you like hunting, didn't go to college, but you make a good living in manufacturing or something. A, urban, college degree, white-collar professions, bit of a divide. What you're going to do is, if you're in the group that feels marginalized, you're going to pick a person that promises you to get to the top of that pyramid. You're going to pick a guy, Donald Trump, that promises to sort of correct that injustice and instill your values into the government and into the education system. And you can see some evidence of these kind of images. Think of the TV shows that are popular. How many of them are set in New York, or LA, or Chicago? So many in Chicago. But how many of them are set in small locales? I mean, the images of success, the images of material wealth that we see are usually in urban centers. And then when we show other locales, like Duck Dynasty folks, it's as a comedy. It's to make fun of them. It's to ridicule them. There's a term, white trash. You've heard the term white trash. How do we expect half the population to feel if there's a name for them? That name is white trash. Hillary Clinton called them deplorables. Remember the basket of deplorables comment she made? How do you expect half the population to react if they continuously feel undervalued? You got Samantha Bee on TV telling them they're stupid. John Oliver on TV telling them they're stupid. You shouldn't vote for Trump, you should vote for Hillary. You're being stupid if you vote for Trump. Well, how can you call half the population stupid and be surprised when they vote for this guy? So that's his hypothesis. His name's Chris Arnott. He's from the Guardian newspaper in England. Fantastic, interesting theory. Maybe there's something there, maybe not. It's one explanation. So, who cares? So I've taken you through a few different things. We got something from the political science that rules matter, and maybe the change in the rules helped Donald Trump. Maybe it's just partisanship, maybe it's political psychology, maybe it's declining social capital that's disengaging us from one another. Who cares? I had an advisor in grad school. We'd have to read books every day and come to discuss them, so I'd always highlight the books and I'd come ready to talk about them, and her question was, who gives a shit? Does it pass the who gives a shit test? And who cares? So what? Who cares? Declining social capital, cultural alienation, doesn't matter. Who cares? Well, democracy needs trust to work. At election time in a democracy, there has to be trust, because if there's not trust, then the losers don't go home. You get this. This is Nigeria. After an election. Kenya, same thing. We can see the same thing in Ukraine, you can see it in Venezuela, you can see it all over the world. When social trust is low, when people don't trust each other, when they're disengaged from each other, then after the election, if you lost the election, you don't have trust that the other group, the winners, are going to treat you well. So you don't go home, you fight. Democracy needs trust. We need to trust each other because we need trust to work. The losers need to go home after the election, and if they don't, then democracy doesn't work. And so that's why it's trouble. If there is declining social capital, if we are becoming disengaged from each other, then I think that's something we really need to worry about. Most of these social science talks end with a big call to action and a big way to change things. I don't really know if I have one, so I can't really leave you on a positive note like that, but maybe just take a look around you, take a look at things like that, how you interact with other people, and think about the importance of trust, treating each other with respect, because that's what we need for a democracy to work. If we don't have that, then we get stuff like this. So, I think that's all I was going to say. And, yeah, we got some time for questions. Yes?
So, Matt, you said that 52% of Trump supporters said that they do not see themselves as being part of a non-religious organization.
Yeah.
Did they also ask them how many of them saw themselves as being part of a religious organization?
I don't recall from the data. That might have been one of them. I
just wonder if the number would have changed significantly or not.
Yeah, it could have. I mean, some of that, I mean, the one union membership on the decline, well, that's not really social capital. I think a lot of that's outsourcing jobs, right? So there's a bunch of things with that data that you gotta take with a grain of salt. Way in the back.
How do you think Donald Trump commenting that the election was going to be rigged?
I think that's a big part of it. I mean, if when levels of trust are low, you can blame the system. The system is rigged against me. That's a great question. Donald Trump has suggested that if he loses, it's probably because it's rigged. And so I do think that's some evidence of maybe some lack of trust. Yes?
Love the graphics towards the end, the cultural divide showing the 50% college-educated urban centers and everything like that, the other 50%. Did you do a correlation of that with race as well and look at the race percentages in the rural areas? So is that where we're also looking at the 50-50?
It does, it pivots on education, but there is a racial element too, absolutely. More, a lot of
the whites live in the rural areas, predominantly in the States.
Yeah, and a lot of the sort of the new rural poverty, if you will, an increase in poverty, increase in drug addiction is happening in these rural white areas, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, so that's a real hotbed of support. And I mean, there's a lot of economic anxiety too, a lot of factories leaving. And I think that's an interesting side note too. When we research poverty, we really read a lot of poverty research. A lot of it's focused on urban areas. There's not a ton on rural areas too. So yeah, I think there's definitely something there. Yes?
In your perspective, of all of this that is happening and going on between Trump and Hillary, and with demographic society falling, do you see a war potentially happening in the near future?
Within the United States? Or between the United States and a different country?
Within the United States, within Canada, around that area?
I don't think so. I think there's too much money to be made without one. And I think there's a big status quo bias, especially when there's the profit motive. So I don't suspect that we'd see a lot of, an internal war, like a new civil war. I don't think we'd see anything like that. I don't, but who knows? Yes?
Yeah, I was just wondering, of your 4 suggestions, do you see them playing out the progressive vote?
I do see some of them, and that's an interesting, I did forget to mention that. There was an interesting vote this summer where the United Kingdom, Britain voted to leave the European Union, and that's huge. And I think some of that could be declining social capital, increased resentment of people that are different than you, especially newcomers to the country. So yeah, I'm sure that played a part in the Brexit vote too. Yeah, so maybe there's something globally going on. Maybe there's a global decline in social capital. Who knows? Yes?
Do you think Donald Trump understands all of this and is working the system brilliantly, or is he just the right guy?
He could be. He could be a tactical genius. I don't know. I do think he's motivated by attention. We live in sort of an attention economy, and so he likes winning things. I think that's why he did so well in the primaries. He got to win a lot. There was one every weekend. It was something that he could win. Now it's sort of, you're seeing him off message a little bit. His debate performance wasn't great, and I think that's maybe part of it. There's no more things to win immediately, and so I wonder if he struggles with that. So I'm not sure that he's a brilliant tactician. I just think he's a guy that likes to win things and likes to get attention, and likes to sell things. I mean, if anybody saw, he had a press conference at one of his hotels, and he didn't even say anything at the press conference. He just, hey, you want to tour my new hotel? So that kind of tells me that maybe if he's a master tactician, it's in marketing and not necessarily in politics. All right, one more. Oh boy, I don't know. I do think that I think it's tougher for Trump to win because he's got to win 4 states. He's got to win Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, and North Carolina. Hillary just needs to win 1 thing. If she wins 1, then she's good. He's got to win all 4, so that's tougher. At the same time, people aren't that excited about Hillary. And people that are excited vote. And so the one thing about Donald Trump supporters, they are pretty excited, and they're more likely to vote. A lot of people support Hillary just because. So if it's a rainy day and turnout's down, then things could be good for Donald Trump. Hillary's got a couple more debates to get people excited, though. So she's, I wouldn't call it a coin toss. I'd say she's got a slight edge, but you never know. You never know. Can't really take that to Vegas, I guess.
One more question.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders, so
Bernie.
he's in the wings. Does he play a role now? Is there something tangible that he started to bring forward?
Bernie Sanders kind of dropped off the map there. He does have access to a lot of email addresses and contact information. In politics, that's like gold, because those are people you can ask for money. And so he's been sharing that with Hillary Clinton, so that's a big contribution that he's made to the effort. He's also stumping for it. With stumping, you go give a speech to support a candidate. And so he's been out, I think he was in New Hampshire a couple days ago, giving a speech in urging his supporters to vote for Hillary Clinton. So the thinking is, hey, if you're excited about me, then I'm telling you to go vote for Hillary Clinton. So he's trying to contribute that way. Yeah?
Sorry, just picking up on that, I actually saw a news report the other day on that with Sanders being a surrogate for Clinton, and unfortunately there was a speech, and for the first 15 minutes it was don't vote Trump, don't vote Trump, don't vote Trump. Oh yeah, by the way, vote Hillary. And he never really mentioned Hillary until like 15, 20 minutes into this presentation. And some of the younger voters are apparently going to the Libertarian, Gary Johnson, as opposed to going to Hillary.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of the swing states.
Yeah, and there is another candidate, Libertarian candidate, Gary Johnson. He's out there. The Green Party has Jill Stein. So if you're not happy with one of those major candidates, maybe you're going to go vote for them. Maybe if you don't love Hillary Clinton, maybe you vote for Gary Johnson. And that's not really good for your candidate because you kind of take away from their vote total. We have time for one more? Yes, one more.
In a time when clearly there's so much populism and that kind of mood is prevalent, why do you think the Clinton campaign chose a fairly middle-of-the-road running mate as opposed to one of the many progressive options?
I think that is exactly her MO. I think that it's not to rock the boat, to be very boring. And
so do you think that's like, sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but do you think that that's the same mistake that the NDP made in the last Canadian election?
No. I just think the NDP voters that had voted for them in 2011 were just parked there temporarily until they got a better Liberal leader. I think they got 1 million voters that kind of shifted to them in 2011, and those 1 million voters flocked right back to the Liberals in 2015. So I suspect that those Thomas Mulder, or those NDP votes weren't necessarily there for good. It was just kind of temporarily parked there. That's my suspicion. All right, I think we can call that a day. Thanks, everyone.